Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.
Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. With me, as always, is the inventor of the infomercial and the original shark on the hit TV series Shark Tank, Kevin Harrington. Mobile Kevin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Seth. Great to be here, and I'm excited with a special guest. So let's have some fun.
That's right. We're on the road today interviewing Michael Hyatt, founder and chairman of Michael Hyatt Company, creator of the Full Focus Planner, which we here live by at Market Domination, New York Times and Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author of multiple books, been on Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fast Company, Businessweek, Entrepreneur, and everywhere else. Here to talk today about his new book, Win at Work, Succeed at Life, 5 Principles to Free Yourself from the Cult of Overwork, is Michael Hyatt. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Seth. Thank you. Kevin, thanks for having me on.
So what inspired you to write this book?
Well, let me tell you the story. So we have to go back in time. So in the year 2000, I took over responsibility as the general manager for one of Thomas Nelson Publishers' 14 book publishing divisions. And at the time, they were the 7th largest book publisher in the country. I inherited this one division that was dead last in every significant financial metric. It wasn't growing. In fact, it was going backwards. It was losing money. The morale for that division was terrible. So the CEO said, how long is it going to take you to turn it around? I said, I think probably 3 years. Of course, I had no clue. I was just pulling a number out of the air. But I went back to the team. I shared with them a vision of what it could look like if we, really buckled down and worked hard. And we did. We were working 70 to 80 hours a week. And the good news was that in 18 months, a year and a half, we went from number 14 to number 1 in terms of revenue growth, in terms of profit margin. Team morale was fantastic. But I got the biggest bonus check I'd ever gotten in my career up to that point. It was more than my annual salary. So I went home pretty proud of myself, super excited to share it with my wife, Gail. I knew she would be elated. And so I bounced into the house. I unfurled the check, showed it to her. And she was just not that enthusiastic. And she said, we need to talk. And I said,
That's not good.
That's not good. So we walked into the den, sat down, and she began to tear up. And she said, I love you. And I appreciate so much the hard work that you put in for our family. But she said, I got to be honest with you. She said, you are never home. And the worst part of that is your 5 daughters. I have 5 girls, all grown now, but at the time they were small. She said, they desperately need you. And she said, even when you are at home, you're not really here. And then she started crying. And I knew the worst was about to come. And she said, honestly, I feel like a single mom. And that was like a huge gut kick because I thought I'd reached the pinnacle of success. And what I discovered was that it was a false summit. So that was like a wake-up call.
Yeah. And so now, as you're talking win at work, so you're the winning at work, do you get into pandemic issues with winning at work also? Is it because the last year has been a brutal situation for a lot of folks, but how do you talk about winning during the pandemic? What are some of the tips there?
Yeah. So here's one of the crazy things about winning at work and succeeding at life. And the reason we pair those two together is we don't believe that you have to compromise one to serve the other. In other words, work-life balance, as much as it's maligned, is possible, but you have to be intentional and you have to define the win in advance. So, one of the things that we argue in the book, and the subtitle of the book kind of says it all, it's 5 principles to free yourself from the cult of overwork. Now, look, I am a hard charging business guy. I've built several companies. I believe in scaling businesses and wringing the most juice out of them. But I also don't want to do it at the expense of my family, my personal health, my most important relationships. So one of the principles in the book that we talk about is the power of constraint. And this is like totally counterintuitive, Kevin, for most people.
Yeah.
And that is by actually working fewer hours, you can accomplish more. So to give you an example, for the last 5 or 6 years in a row, I've taken off 162 days a year. Okay, so that's every weekend, every holiday, 11 weeks of vacation, including a 30-day sabbatical. And I don't connect with work. I'm not plugged in, none of that. At the same time, for the last 3 years in a row, our company has been named to the Inc. 5000 fastest growing private companies in America. So scaling, but working less. So during the pandemic, about the third weekend of the pandemic, we experienced what a lot of companies experience. We have about 47 full-time employees, and we have a lot of young employees with young kids. And now suddenly they had no daycare. They had no school for the kids, and the kids were underfoot, and everybody was stressed out of their mind. So we said, kind of as a temporary provision, because we do believe in winning at work and succeeding at life, let's go to a 6-hour workday. Now, part of me was really scared to do this, right? Because I didn't want productivity to suffer. We didn't revise our budget for the year, and we had a very aggressive budget already. We had a 50% increase on the bottom line that was budgeted for 2020. So we said, we don't want to give up on that, and we're going to measure productivity by one simple metric. We don't want to see any slippage financially. So after 2 weeks, the executive team got together and we said, how did it go? We said, we can't really tell any difference. It seems like everybody's just as productive as they were before. So we said, okay, let's try it for another couple of months. We did. In fact, we did this through the summer. We loved it. Team was just as productive as they'd ever been. So then we said in our strategic planning meeting last September, we said, this is going to be a permanent thing at Michael Hyatt Co. We're going to go to a 30-hour work week. So we finished the year 101% ahead of last year on the bottom line, 50% ahead of budget. So I really believe that constraint was what helped us to do that. Again, I know it's counterintuitive, but it forces you to prioritize. It's like that Friday before you go on vacation. You're uber productive.
So I think, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Seth.
So I think you're right. It's counterintuitive and kind of contrarian, because most programs that preach work-life balance say life first, work second, and that should be your priority. And you're delivering on the balance, but you talk about winning at work first. Why does what happens at work show up at home? Well,
I think for a lot of people, work is kind of the only domain of life and endeavor. They derive all their meaning from it. They get immense rewards at work. They can measure progress. So they get a real sense of happiness and, well-being from that. And unfortunately, we don't get those same things from a lot of the other areas of our life, especially if you're raising kids. It's a long-term project. You're trying to improve your marriage. It's a long-term project. And a lot of times we just don't know what to do with ourselves when we're at home. But there are at least, and I write about this in another book that I wrote called Living Forward, but there's at least 10 domains of life. There's your spiritual life, your intellectual, your emotional life, your physical life. You got your financial life, your vocation, your avocation, your marriage, your kids, all these different areas. But here's the thing, they're all interrelated. So that if you're feeling stress at work, that's going to have an impact on your most important relationships. If on the other hand, if you're going through, marital strife or struggle with one of your kids, it's almost impossible not to bring that to work so that you're distracted at work. So all these things work together. And when they're working well, they actually serve one another, complement one another, and ensure that you get the best result in each of these domains. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. So I have to ask, 162 days, was that per year of time away?
Yes.
Is Gail's your wife? Is Gail happy now?
She is. We've been married for 42 years. We have 9 grandkids. Our 5 kids live within 20 minutes of us. 3 of the 5 are married. We have 9 grandkids. They're all within about 2 minutes of us.
Nice.
And so, we have time for that kind of stuff now. And I haven't, taken my foot off the gas pedal for the business. I want the business to continue, to scale and build and do. We have amazing things we want to accomplish in the world, but I don't want to sacrifice my family or my health on the altar of my ambition. And that's what I think too many young entrepreneurs are being encouraged to do by celebrity entrepreneurs who advocate what we call in the book the hustle fallacy. Just work hard and eventually you'll be able to give attention to those things that matter. But in the meantime, you got to white knuckle it. And I think, I meet them all the time because we coach over 600 entrepreneurs, but we meet them all the time, people that are burned out, who have blown up their health, blown up their marriage, their kids, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, why is there a danger in thinking that the work-life balance is a myth and that we can't get it? Because you've proven that you can.
Yeah. And I think we've not only proven it, I've not only proven it for myself, but in the clients that we coach, in the people we serve, you mentioned the full focus planner, many of those people are in some state of achieving work-life balance. And obviously all of us go out of balance from time to time. And, there are seasons when that's inevitable, but what really happens, Seth, is too often those seasons can become permanent. So we deceive ourselves into thinking that, just when I get acclimated to this new job, then I'll give my spouse and the kids the attention they deserve. Or when I get this marketing director who resigned, when I get them replaced, then I'll give attention to my family like they deserve. But the problem is that season that we think is temporary turns into another season, and pretty soon, it's a way of life.
Michael, obviously you've got the skill set to change your life, improve your life. You've written the book. That's great. By the way, can't wait to read it because I could use a few tips here on working a little less. So thank you. And looking forward to reading your book. But do you have any, without mentioning names, maybe a couple examples of people that have had some kind of a transformation under your guidance and coaching and advice to work less, constrain themselves, etc. here, just to chat about here today?
Yeah, one of them is a lady by the name of Stormy Bradley. And she's a person that we profile in the book, and we just sent out, and we did a beautiful video of her life. But she was an overworked business owner living in Texas, who of all things had a steel and milling factory. And this last year, she worked less than she's ever worked before. She grew her revenue 55.5% in 2020 during the pandemic, grew it over $28 million in 1 year, and was home every day at 3:00 to be with her kids.
That's beautiful.
And that's kind of we've got tons of examples of people like that. But again, it begins by establishing that constraint. And also, I think for people like us, Kevin, that are hard charging entrepreneurs, we kind of have to decide that there's a life outside of work. And that takes some intention, right?
Yeah.
It takes some planning. Like one of the reasons why I could never take vacations in the past is I didn't know what to do with myself. If I'm on idle, I get distracted and I eventually drift back into what's familiar, and what's familiar to me is work. So I had to develop hobbies,
right?
And I love to learn. And so whether it was fly fishing or whether I played the Native American flute, photography, all these things, I just decided I was going to get interested in. And I think it's made me a more interesting person, a more balanced person. And it's given me a lot to bring back to work. And Stormy's a good example of the question you asked.
Yeah.
You talk about some of the things leaders can do to implement the double win within their organizations. We want folks to go get the book, but can you tease us with one or two of them?
Yeah, I think one of the things is just having hard boundaries around the workday. Back when I was the CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishers, because I went on from that job to eventually become the CEO of that company, and we were publicly held at the time, and then we sold to private equity. And funny story, we thought we were kind of sold on the idea that we wouldn't have to report to the street every quarter, so we could really focus on long-term growth. And what my experience was, and a lot of people that have done private equity know this, but I went from reporting quarterly as a public held company to reporting weekly, right? And so I was getting these emails from my private equity partners or text messages at all hours of the night and day. And I realized that never were those congratulatory after about 6 p.m. at night. There were always some problem that would keep me from going to sleep. So one of the things that we said inside our company is before the pandemic, we don't want people working more than 40 hours a week. Now, since the pandemic, no more than 30 hours a week. And again, with the understanding that there are times when we have to go out of out of balance for the sake of some emergency or something. But that's one thing. So we don't text, we don't email, we don't contact people when they have time off. We just had our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, come back from paternal leave. She was gone for 3 months. We didn't text her. We didn't email her. We told her, we don't want to hear from you. We want you to give attention to this, brand new baby girl so that she gets the nurture and the love that she needs. Because here's what happens. If that doesn't happen, that's going to show up in her work downstream. So it's an investment that we make in the future of our company because this is a marathon. We're in it for the long haul.
When I think of working less, of course, one of the things that comes to mind is Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week, right? So
love that book.
That was great. But so I think what you're talking about work, like when you say working less, 30 hours, not a 40-hour week, a 30, like how many hours a week is less for somebody like yourself and or your recommendation for hard charging entrepreneurs like ourselves?
Well, first of all, let me just recommend another book that's not my book, but it's a book that heavily influenced me by Alex Pang called Shorter. And he argues for why shorter work hours, and has a gazillion case studies in the book, why these companies scale so rapidly. And it's the simple fact that it forces you to identify your priorities and not get sidetracked by busy work, or what I call fake work. Not all work is created equal. We surveyed our clients a couple of years ago when I wrote my book, Free to Focus. And we said, on average, for those of you that work with a daily task list, how many items on average do you have on your task list? And so the average was 15. Well, we know from the Pareto principle that 20% of the effort drives 80% of the results, right? So 20%, not all those tasks are equal. Some of them are as simple as running an errand. Some of them are much more consequential and have to do with revenue generation or profit generation. And so we said, okay, if 20% of the effort drives 80% of the results, what are the 3 tasks that you need to focus on every day? And we call these the daily big 3, and it's baked into the full focus planner. So we teach the people that we coach to, first of all, identify 3 goals for the quarter, and then 3 objectives for the week. In other words, if you could only get 3 things done, what would be the 3 things that would move the needle? And then every day, what are the big 3? You can have some other tasks, but you're going to declare a win when you've accomplished those big 3. You do that every day, 5 days a week, week in, week out, you can create a lot of impact in the world.
Now, you didn't write this book by yourself. You had quite an amazing contributor. You want to talk about her for just a minute?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I have 5 daughters. My oldest daughter is named Megan, and she's been working with me for about 7 years. Of course, she lived through that whole thing when I wasn't giving attention to the girls. She's now the CEO of our company. So I made her the CEO on January the 2nd of this year. And we had announced a succession plan where that was going to happen next year. But, she's just a fast study, and she was ready to go, and I was ready for her to step in. So she kind of tells it from her story, or from her side. But here's the kicker. She has 5 kids, including 3 adopted kids and 2 that are high need. And so when she came to work for me 7 years ago, and I wanted her to be our COO, and she had been doing some contract work in marketing for me. And she said, well, Dad, I'll do it on one condition. She said, I want to pick up my kids from school. And so I want to be done by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I want to send them off on the bus. So I don't want to start work till 9. So I said, okay. I said, honestly, I don't care how long it takes you. Just get the work done. So she was kind of our first experiment in this whole thing. And she still, to this day, is doing that. She's running our company. She serves on some boards. She's got 5 kids. She's married. And, she's winning at work and succeeding at life. And again, I would say this for both of us, not perfectly. We have our days. But overall, we're experiencing that. We call it the double win.
Awesome. For our folks who want to learn more and get the book, Win at Work, Succeed at Life, where is the best place for us to send them?
Well, the best place is to go to a website that we've created specifically for this. And it's called winandsucceedbook.com, winandsucceedbook.com/shark. So we've designed this just for you guys. And there we've got over $500 worth of bonuses.
Awesome. Well, we greatly appreciate that. We will steer everyone there. This has been Seth Greene with Kevin Harrington and Michael Hyatt for Sharkpreneur. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time.